The fluorescent lights of Marino's Bistro hummed their eternal song, a low buzz that Chen had long ago stopped hearing. She balanced 3 plates along her left arm, the chicken parmesan, the fettuccine alfredo, the house salad with dressing on the side, while her right hand gripped the pitcher of ice water that always seemed to be sweating in the August heat. The air conditioning had broken again, and Louis, the owner, kept promising to fix it next week, the same promise he'd made for 3 summers running. It was 7:47 p.m. on a Thursday, the kind of evening that stretched long and lazy through the restaurant's yellow-painted walls. The dinner rush had crested and broken, leaving behind the stragglers, a young couple sharing tiramisu by the window, an old man doing a crossword puzzle over cold coffee, and Table 12. Table 12 was always trouble. Not in the loud, demanding way that made other servers roll their eyes and draw straws. No, Table 12's trouble was quieter, more insidious. It was the table where the light fixtures cast shadows that made everyone look tired, where the floorboard creaked with a sound like disappointment, where tips came in exact change, counted out with deliberate slowness. Tonight, Table 12 held 4 men in suits that cost more than Maya's car. She knew expensive fabric when she saw it. Her mother had worked in a tailor's shop in Chinatown before the arthritis took her hands, and these suits whispered wealth in a language only certain people could hear. The man at the head of the table, silver-haired and sharp-featured, wore a watch that caught the light like a small, contained sun. "More bread," he said without looking up as Maya approached. Not a question, not even a request. A statement of fact, as if the bread would materialize through the force of his expectation alone. "Of course," Maya said, her service smile fixed in place. Warm, but not too warm. Attentive, but not obsequious. She'd perfected it over 6 years of carrying plates and absorbing other people's moods like a sponge. "I'll have that right out for you." She turned toward the kitchen, but the man's voice stopped her. "And tell whoever is making that noise to stop. We're trying to have a conversation." Maya froze. The pitcher of water trembled slightly in her hand, sending small ripples across the surface. In the kitchen, through the round porthole window of the swinging door, she could see Julio at the grill, and beside him, barely visible, Maria by the prep station. Maria was singing. She sang the way some people breathed, unconsciously, necessarily. Old songs in Spanish that her grandmother had taught her, songs about heartbreak and revolution, about mountains that touched the sky and lovers who became stars. Her voice was untrained but honest, raw in the way that homemade bread is raw, full of irregular beauty. "Maria?" Maya said quietly. The older woman looked up, her round face creasing with concern. "¿Qué pasa, mija?" "Table 12. They want you to stop singing." Maria's hands stilled. For a moment, the only sound was the sizzle of Julio's grill, and beside him, barely visible, Maria by the prep station. "Maria started," Maya said quietly. The older woman looked up, her round face creasing with concern. "¿Qué pasa, mija?" "Table 12. They want you to stop singing." Maria's hands stilled. For a moment, the only sound was the sizzle of Julio's grill, and beside him, barely visible, Maria by the prep station. Maria was singing. She sang the way some people breathed, unconsciously, necessarily, old songs in Spanish that her grandmother had taught her, songs about heartbreak and revolution, about mountains that touched the sky and lovers who became stars. Her voice was untrained but honest, raw in the way that homemade bread is raw, full of irregular beauty. "Table 12. They want you to stop singing." Maria's hands stilled. For a moment, the only sound was the sizzle of Julio's grill, and beside him, barely visible, Maria by the prep station. Then she nodded, once, and returned to her onions in silence. Maya felt something crack inside her chest, small and sharp. She'd been 7 years old when her father left, disappearing into the fog of San Francisco one October morning and never returning. Her mother had worked 3 jobs to keep them in their tiny apartment above the laundromat, and on the nights when exhaustion wrapped around her like a second skin, she would sit by Maya's bed and hum. Not songs exactly, she'd been too tired for words, but melodies that felt like promises. The promise that morning would come, that rent would be paid, that love, even when stretched thin, could still hold. She had learned then that some people's voices were meant to fill silence, and some people's silence was meant to fill the spaces where voices should have been. She delivered the breadbasket to table 12 without ceremony. The silver-haired man didn't acknowledge her, but one of his companions, younger, with kind eyes and perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, offered a small smile. "Thank you." And she felt the flicker of something that might have been gratitude, or might have been surprise that basic courtesy still existed. The evening wore on. The young couple left, fingers intertwined. The old man finished his crossword and folded his newspaper with meticulous care. Table 12 ordered dessert, tiramisu for 3, espresso for 1, and Maya served them with mechanical efficiency, her mind elsewhere. It was 9:15 when she heard the first note. Not from the kitchen this time, from her own throat. She was clearing table 7, stacking plates with practiced efficiency, when it happened. A melody she'd been carrying in her chest all day, maybe all week, maybe her whole life, suddenly demanded release. It started as a hum, barely audible over the clatter of silverware, then grew into words. The song was old, something her mother used to sing, about a bird that learned to swim and a fish that learned to fly, about the impossible becoming possible when you stopped asking permission from the sky. The lyrics were silly, childish even, but the melody carried weight. It rose and fell like waves, like breathing, like all the things Maya had swallowed down over years of "yes, sir," and "right away, ma'am," and "I'll take care of that." Her voice was untrained but true, hitting notes with an instinct that surprised even her. She sang softly, not performing but simply releasing, letting the music out the way you'd open a window to let in air. She didn't notice the kitchen door swing open, didn't see Julio lean out, spatula in hand, his eyebrows raised, didn't catch Maria's sharp intake of breath, or the way her hand went to her chest, fingers splayed over her heart. She noticed when the silver-haired man stood up so abruptly, his chair scraped against the floor with a sound like a record scratch. "Enough!" His voice cracked through the restaurant like thunder. "Is this what passes for professionalism? First the kitchen staff, now the servers? This is a restaurant, not a damned talent show." Maya's voice died in her throat. The stack of plates in her arms suddenly felt impossibly heavy. Around the restaurant, the few remaining diners looked up from their tables, curiosity and discomfort warring on their faces. "I apologize," she managed, her service voice kicking in automatically. I didn't ask what you meant," the man said, and his eyes, pale blue like ice, held no warmth. "I asked you to stop making noise." Noise. The word hung in the air between them, sharp-edged and cutting. Maya felt it land in her chest next to all the other words that had accumulated there over the years. Just a waitress, nobody special, disposable. "Richard," the man with the kind eyes stood, placing a hand on the silver-haired man's arm. "Come on, let's not—" "Don't tell me to calm down, Marcus," Richard snapped, shaking off the hand. "I'm paying for a meal, not a concert from the help." The help. Maya set the plates down on the nearest table, moving carefully because her hands had started to shake. She opened her mouth to apologize again, to defend herself, to say something, anything, but no words came. The melody that had felt so necessary moments ago now seemed like hubris, like reaching for something that was never meant for her fingers. "I'll get your check," she said quietly. She turned toward the register, her vision swimming slightly. Behind her, she heard Richard settling back into his chair with an aggrieved sigh, heard him say something to his companions about the state of service these days, heard the younger man, Marcus, murmur something she couldn't quite catch. At the register, Luis appeared from the back office, his round face creased with concern. "Maya, what happened?" he said in his thick Italian accent. "Nothing," she said, punching in table 12's total with more force than necessary. "Just nothing." But it wasn't nothing. Nothing didn't make her fingers tremble. Nothing didn't make her want to walk out through the back door and keep walking until her feet carried her somewhere, anywhere else. Nothing didn't feel like a door closing on something she hadn't even known she'd been reaching for. She printed the check and delivered it to table 12 with shaking hands. Richard didn't look at her as he threw down his credit card, a black American Express that gleamed dully in the yellow light. Maya processed it in silence, returned it with the receipt, and stood a respectful distance away as they signed. The four men stood to leave. Richard swept past her without a glance, as if she'd already ceased to exist. Two of his companions followed in his wake, but Marcus, the kind-eyed one, paused. "I'm sorry about that," he said quietly, his voice pitched for her ears alone. "He's under a lot of stress." Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Stress. As if stress excused cruelty. As if the pressures of counting money gave you permission to discount other people's humanity. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. For a moment, Maya thought he was going to add to the tip, a paltry 12% that Richard had calculated with precision. But instead, he pulled out a business card. "You have a remarkable voice," he said, pressing the card into her hand. "Raw, yes. Untrained, but remarkable nonetheless. If you're interested," he trailed off, glancing toward the door where his companions waited. "If you're interested in exploring that gift, call me." Then he was gone, the restaurant door chiming cheerfully behind him, as if nothing had happened, as if the world hadn't just shifted slightly on its axis. Maya looked down at the card. Heavy stock, expensive, embossed letters that caught the light. Marcus Webb, Senior Talent Scout, Resonance Records. Her hands were still shaking as she slipped the card into her apron pocket. The restaurant felt too quiet now, the silence where music should have been, stretching out like a question with no answer. In the kitchen, Maria had stopped singing entirely. Julio worked his grill with grim efficiency, and even the usually jovial dishwasher Tommy seemed subdued as he scrubbed at a stubborn pot. Maya collected her tips at the end of her shift, $127, counting Richard's calculated 12%, and changed out of her uniform in the cramped staff bathroom. Her reflection in the spotted mirror looked tired, older than her 28 years. She thought about her mother, about the promises hummed in the dark, about all the music that had lived and died in silence. She thought about Richard's face when he'd called her voice noise. She thought about Marcus's card in her pocket, heavy as a secret, light as a dare. The night air hit her face as she pushed through the back door into the alley. September in the city smelled like fog and exhaust, like possibility and disappointment mixed together until you couldn't tell which was which. Her car, a 2004 Honda Civic with a taped-up passenger window, sat in its usual spot beneath the broken streetlight. Maya sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, key in the ignition but not turning it. Through the kitchen window, she could see the lights still on, could make out the shapes of Julio and Tommy closing up for the night. In her pocket, The business card felt like it was burning through the fabric. She pulled it out, ran her thumb over the embossed letters. Resonance records. She'd heard of them vaguely. They'd launched careers, discovered nobodies and turned them into somebodies, worked with artists who topped charts and filled stadiums. And Marcus Webb thought she had a remarkable voice. But Richard, billionaire Richard with his expensive suits and ice-chip eyes, thought she made noise. Who was right? She started the car, and the engine coughed twice before catching. The radio came on automatically, some pop song about dreams and destiny, and not giving up. She almost laughed at the timing, at the universe's sense of irony. She drove through the city streets, past closed shops and open bars, past the glittering promise of downtown and into the quieter neighborhoods where streetlights cast pools of yellow on cracked sidewalks. Her apartment building stood on the corner of Ashbury and Clayton, a 3-story walk-up painted a fading mint green. Inside, her one-bedroom apartment greeted her with familiar emptiness. The couch her mother had left her before she died, the coffee table from a garage sale, the photographs on the wall, her mother young and laughing, Maya's graduation from community college, a faded picture of her father that she'd kept despite everything, despite the abandonment and the absence, and the questions that would never have answers. She made tea in the microwave, she'd never bothered buying a kettle, and sat on the couch with Marcus's card on the coffee table in front of her. The silence in her apartment felt different than the silence at the restaurant. Here it was hers. Here she could choose to fill it or leave it empty. She thought about calling, picked up her phone 3 times, set it down twice. The third time, she actually pulled up the keypad, actually started entering the numbers embossed on the card. Then she remembered Richard's face, the disgust there, the dismissal, noise. Who was she kidding? She was a waitress with a community college education and $347 in her savings account. She sang in the shower and sometimes in the car when no one was listening. That didn't make her a singer any more than cooking ramen made her a chef. Marcus had been kind, that was all. Probably felt guilty about his boss's behavior. The card was a platitude, not a promise. She set the phone down and finished her tea in silence. Maya woke at 5:47 a.m. to the sound of garbage trucks grinding their way down Clayton Street. She lay in bed for 13 minutes, she knew it was 13 because she watched the numbers change on her phone screen, before forcing herself up and into the shower. The water pressure was weak, had been weak since she'd moved in 4 years ago, but she'd learned to work with it. She stood under the lukewarm spray and, without thinking, started to hum. The melody from last night returned, the one about the bird and the fish, and with it came the memory of Richard's face. She stopped humming mid-phrase, her hand going to her throat as if she could physically hold back the sound. In the kitchen, she made coffee in her ancient drip machine and ate toast with peanut butter standing over the sink. Through her window, she could see Mrs. Chen from 2B watering her window boxes, could hear Mr. Rodriguez's television through the thin walls. He kept it on CNN 24 hours a day, had ever since his wife died. Could smell someone frying bacon, the scent drifting up through the vents. This was her life. These walls, these sounds, these small rituals that marked the passage of days into weeks, into months, into years. Was it enough? The question surprised her with its sharpness. She'd been content, or at least she had told herself she was content with her shifts at Marino's, with her Tuesday book club at the library, with her fun day afternoon calls to her aunt in Sacramento, content with the life she'd built from the pieces left after her mother died, after the medical bills devoured their savings, after all the could-have-beens collapsed into the stark reality of what was. But last night, for those few moments when she had been singing, really singing, not just humming or singing along to the radio, she had felt something, a door opening inside her chest, a sense of rightness, of purpose, of being exactly where she was meant to be, doing exactly what she was meant to be doing. And then Richard had slammed that door shut with a single word: noise. Maya finished her coffee, washed the mug, set it in the drying rack next to yesterday's dishes. She dressed for her morning shift in black pants and a white button-down, pulled her hair back in a ponytail, dabbed on the bare minimum of makeup. In the mirror, she practiced her service smile. It looked hollow. The bus arrived 7 minutes late, which meant she'd be cutting it close for the start of her shift. She found a seat near the back and watched the city roll past the smudged windows. San Francisco in the early morning was a different creature than San Francisco at night. Quieter, grayer, showing its bones before the daily rush painted over them with chaos and color. At Market Street, a street performer was setting up his guitar case on the corner, and Maya watched him through the window as the bus idled at a red light. He couldn't have been more than 25, dreadlocks and an easy smile, and when he started to play, you could see his whole body commit to the music. He didn't care who was listening or not listening. He played because the music demanded to be played. What would that feel like? To be that free? The light changed, and the bus lurched forward, carrying her away from the question. Marino's was already buzzing with breakfast customers when she arrived. Louis was at the register, his reading glasses perched on his broad nose as he squinted at invoices. He looked up when she came in, and his expression softened. "Maya, good, you're here. Listen, about last night."
"It's fine," she said quickly, tying her apron. "Really, it won't happen again." "That's not what I—" He sighed, removed his glasses, rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Those men, they have no right to talk to you that way, to talk to Maria that way. You both have beautiful voices. You bring life to this place." Something in Maya's chest tightened. "It's okay, Louis. They were customers. The customer is always right. Isn't that what they say?" "They say a lot of stupid things," Louis muttered, but he didn't push further. "Table 4 wants their check when you get a chance." The morning shift blurred past in a haze of coffee refills and breakfast orders. The usual regulars came and went, Harold with his 3 eggs over easy and wheat toast dry, the book club ladies who shared 1 order of pancakes and lingered for 2 hours over endless coffee, the businessmen who tipped exactly 20%, calculated to the penny, and never made eye contact. During her break, Maya sat in the alley behind the restaurant and pulled out Marcus's card. She'd carried it in her apron pocket all morning, and the edges were already starting to curl from her nervous handling. Resonance Records. She Googled them on her phone. Their website was sleek, professional, featuring photos of artists she recognized, a pop star whose songs played constantly on the radio, a rock band that had headlined Coachella, an indie folk singer whose voice had made Maya cry the first time she heard it. These were real musicians, talented, trained, polished people who'd probably been singing since they could talk, who'd taken lessons and studied theory and practiced for thousands of hours. What was she? A waitress who hummed while she worked. But Marcus had given her his card, had called her voice remarkable. Her finger hovered over the phone icon on his contact page. 1 tap. That's all it would take. 1 tap and she could call, could thank him for his kindness, could maybe, just maybe, see if he'd really meant what he said. "Maya!" Julio's head appeared from the kitchen door. "Order up for table 9. She pocketed the card and went back inside. The lunch rush was brutal. A tour bus stopped unexpectedly, flooding the restaurant with 40 hungry tourists who all wanted separate checks and had dietary restrictions written in languages she didn't speak. By the time they left, leaving a mess of napkins and a mediocre tip, Maya's feet ached and her service smile had become a grimace. She was clearing their tables when she heard it. A voice, clear and strong, coming from the kitchen. Maria was singing again. The melody was different from last night's song, faster, more joyful, something about dancing in the rain. Maya paused, a stack of dirty plates in her hands, and listened. In Maria's voice, she could hear mountains and valleys, could hear the journey from Guatemala to California, could hear every hard thing survived and every joy seized despite the hardship. Louis came out from the office, drawn by the sound. He caught Maya's eye and smiled, a real smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Beautiful, no? Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. When Maria's song ended, Louis came out in the kitchen. He heard him say something in rapid Italian, and Maria laughed, that deep, rich laugh that seemed to come from her toes. Then Julio joined in, saying something in Spanish that made them both laugh harder. They were family, Maya realized. Not by blood, but by choice. By the thousands of hours spent together in this kitchen, in this restaurant that smelled like garlic and coffee and possibility. When had she stopped believing in family? When her father left? When her mother died? When she realized that the fairy tales she'd grown up on, the ones where kindness was rewarded and dreams came true, were just stories people told to make the darkness less dark.
Her break came at 2:30. She took her sandwich, leftover fettuccine between 2 pieces of bread, a Waitress special, and sat at the back booth, the one with the ripped vinyl that Louis kept promising to fix. She pulled out Marcus's card again, stared at it while she ate mechanically, not tasting the food. What was the worst that could happen? He'd tell her it was a mistake? That he'd been caught up in the moment? That actually she wasn't that good? She'd survived worse. She'd survived her father's abandonment and her mother's death and the crushing weight of medical debt. She'd survived Richard's contempt and 6 years of carrying plates and swallowing her voice. She could survive one phone call. Before she could talk herself out of it, she dialed. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. This was stupid. This was Marcus Webb speaking. His voice was warm, professional, slightly distracted. Maya's throat went dry. Hi, my name is Maya, Chen. You came into Marino's Bistro last night and you gave me your card? I'm the waitress who was... Maya, yes, of course. The distraction vanished from his voice, replaced by genuine warmth. I'm so glad you called. I was hoping you would. Really? The word came out smaller than she'd intended. Really? Listen, I know last night was uncomfortable. Richard can be difficult. But I meant what I said. You have something special in your voice. Raw, yes, but that's not always a bad thing. Some of the best artists I've worked with started raw. Maya's free hand was trembling. She pressed it flat against the table. I don't have any training. I've never taken a lesson or anything. I just sing sometimes, for myself. That's often where the best music comes from. Look, why don't you come by the studio? No pressure, no commitments. Just come sing for me. Let me hear what you can do in a proper setting. If nothing comes of it, at least you'll have the experience. If something does, he paused, and she could hear the smile in his voice. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. I work most days, Maya said, already running through her schedule in her head, but I'm off on Mondays. Monday works perfectly. How about 10 a.m.? We're in the Mission, on Valencia between 21st and 22nd. There's a coffee shop on the first floor. We're upstairs. Just tell them you're here to see me. Okay. Maya's voice came out breathy, barely there. Okay. Monday at 10. Excellent. And Maya, don't be nervous. Just be yourself. That's what caught my attention. The authenticity. Don't lose that. After they hung up, Maya sat in the booth for a long moment, the phone still in her hand. Around her, the restaurant hummed with its usual sounds, the hiss of the grill, the clatter of dishes, the murmur of conversation. But underneath it all, she could hear something else, a melody, faint but insistent, rising from somewhere deep inside her chest. She had 4 days to prepare, 4 days to figure out what to sing, how to present herself, what to wear. 4 days to convince herself this wasn't a mistake. The afternoon shift passed in a blur. Maya's mind was only half on her work, the other half spinning through scenarios. What if she froze? What if her voice cracked? What if Marcus realized he had made a terrible mistake? What if he didn't? At 5:37, during a lull between the lunch and dinner crowds, Maria came out from the kitchen and found Maya refilling salt shakers. "Mija," she said, settling into the booth across from her with a soft grunt. "You've been different today. Something happened." Maya looked up, meeting Maria's dark, knowing eyes. "I called him. The man from last night. Marcus. I'm going to sing for him on Monday." Maria's face broke into a smile that could have lit the restaurant. "Ay, que bueno! This is wonderful news." "I don't know," Maya said, her hands still busy with the salt shakers. "I'm scared. What if I'm not good enough?" "Not good enough for who?" Maria reached across the table and stilled Maya's hands with her own, hands that were rough from years of work, but gentle in their touch. "Listen to me. When I came to this country, I was 23 years old. I left everything. Mi familia, mi pueblo, everything I knew. You know why?"
Maya shook her head. "Because there was a voice inside me that said, there is more. Not more money, not more things, just more. More life to live, more songs to sing, more world to see. That voice, it doesn't lie. When it speaks, you listen. But what if I fail? Then you fail. So what? You think I didn't fail? I came here thinking I would become a chef, open my own restaurant. Instead, I worked prep in someone else's kitchen." Maria's smile didn't waver. "But I am happy. You know why? Because I listened to that voice. I tried. Failure with trying is better than success with never risking anything." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm terrified." "Good. Terrified means it matters." Maria squeezed her hands once more, then released them. "Now, you need to practice. What will you sing?" "I don't know. I hadn't thought." "Then think. You have 4 days. Find a song that tells your truth, not someone else's truth, yours." The evening rush came and went. Maya moved through it mechanically, her mind elsewhere. What song told her truth? She thought about the lullabies her mother had hummed, the pop songs on the radio, the folk ballads she'd discovered in college during those late nights in the dorm when she couldn't sleep and music was the only thing that kept the loneliness at bay. At 9:15, the same time she'd started singing last night, a couple came in and requested table 12. Maya felt her stomach clench, but she led them there with her practiced smile. They were young, maybe in their late 20s, dressed casually. The woman had kind eyes, and the man held her hand across the table as they looked at the menus. "This is our anniversary," the woman said as she poured water. 5 years. We had our first date here, actually." "That's wonderful," Maya said, and meant it. "Congratulations." "We almost didn't come back that night," the man admitted with a laugh. "The service was terrible that night. Our waitress never smiled once. But the food was so good, and something about the atmosphere." He gestured vaguely at the yellow walls, the mismatched chairs, the way the light pooled in corners. It felt like home. After she took their order and retreated to the kitchen, Maya found herself thinking about atmosphere, about how places could hold feelings the way jars held fireflies, about how Marino's, for all its chipped plates and broken air conditioning, had been her home for 6 years. What would it mean to leave? Because that's what Marcus was offering, wasn't it? Not just a recording contract or a career, those felt too big, too impossible to grasp, but a door, a way out of this life and into something else, something unknown. Was she brave enough to walk through it? At the end of her shift, Louis called her into the office. He looked tired, older somehow, and there were new lines around his eyes that Maya didn't remember seeing before. Maya, I need to tell you something. He gestured for her to sit. The restaurant, we're struggling. Have been for a while. The rent keeps going up. The costs keep going up, but I can't raise prices without losing customers. Maya's chest tightened. Louis, no. I don't know how much longer I can keep the doors open. Maybe 6 months. Maybe a year, if we're lucky. He rubbed his face with both hands. I'm telling you because you're family. You and Maria and Julio and Tommy. You're family. And family shouldn't be blindsided. What will you do? I don't know yet. Maybe sell. Maybe close. Maybe pray for a miracle. He attempted a smile. You still believe in miracles, Maya? She thought about Marcus's card in her pocket, about Monday at 10 a.m., and about the melody that had been growing inside her chest since last night. I'm trying to, she said. That night, lying in bed with the sounds of the city filtering through her window, Maya pulled up YouTube on her phone. She searched for audition songs, for singing tips, for videos of people who'd made it from nothing to something. She watched a woman who'd worked 3 jobs while raising 2 kids finally get her break at 43. Watched a man who'd lived in his car for 6 months before a viral video changed everything. Watched countless stories of people who'd been told no and you're not good enough and give up, who'd kept going anyway. At 2:14 a.m., she finally fell asleep with her phone still playing, with voices of strangers singing about dreams and determination, filling her small room with borrowed hope. She dreamed of her mother, not the mother from the end, thin and gray and fighting a battle she couldn't win, but the mother from before, young, laughing, dancing in the kitchen while dinner burned on the stove. In the dream, her mother was singing that old song about the bird and the fish, and Maya was 7 years old again, believing that anything was possible. When she woke, the melody was still there. Friday morning began with rain, the kind that turned San Francisco streets into mirrors and made every surface slick with possibility and danger in equal measure. Maya overslept by 27 minutes and had to skip breakfast to make her shift on time. She arrived breathless and damp, her hair already escaping its ponytail, water dripping from her jacket onto the restaurant's tiled floor. You're late, Louis said, but there was no heat in it. He looked like he hadn't slept, dark circles under his eyes that matched the storm clouds outside. I'm sorry, the bus. It's fine, just Table 8 is already seated and asking for coffee. Table 8 was Harold, the 3 eggs over easy regular, and he gave Maya a disapproving look as she approached with the coffee pot. Punctuality is a virtue, he said in his reedy voice, the same thing he'd been saying every time she was even 30 seconds behind in refilling his cup for the past 6 years. You're absolutely right, Maya said with her service smile, pouring his coffee to exactly 3/4 full, exactly the way he liked it. I apologize for the delay. The morning crawled by with agonizing slowness. Every customer seemed more demanding than usual, every order more complicated. The book club ladies sent back their pancakes twice, too cold, then too warm, finally just right like some fucked-up Goldilocks situation that made Maya want to scream. The 9-table businessman knocked over his water glass and acted like she'd done it, leaving no tip on a $30 check. During her break, Maya stood in the alley despite the rain, letting it soak through her shirt while she practiced breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the way her mother had taught her when the panic attacks started after her father left. You okay? Tommy appeared in the doorway, his perpetually cheerful face creased with concern. He was 19, working his way through community college, always smiling despite the fact that he spent 8 hours a day elbow-deep in dishwater. You are? Because you've been weird since Thursday night. Ever since that rich asshole... He stopped himself. Sorry, ever since that customer gave you trouble. Maya turned to look at him, really look at him. Tommy, with his easy smile and his beat-up Converse and his dreams of becoming a physical therapist. When did she stop noticing the people around her? When did they just become part of the backdrop instead of actual humans with their own struggles and hopes? Can I ask you something? Sure. Are you happy? Working here, going to school, all of it? Tommy considered this, his head tilted like a confused puppy. Yeah, I guess. I mean, washing dishes isn't exactly my life's calling, but it pays tuition. And you guys are cool. Maria's like the grandma I never had, and Louis lets me take time off for exams. Plus, he grinned, the free food doesn't hurt. But don't you ever want more? More what? I don't know. More everything. More life. More something that feels like it matters. Tommy's smile faded, replaced with something more thoughtful. I think washing dishes matters. Not like world-changing matters, but it matters to Louis. It matters to the customers who eat off clean plates. It matters to me because it's getting me where I want to go. He paused. But yeah, sometimes I think about more. Like, what if I could help people now instead of waiting 4 more years? What if there was a faster way? But faster isn't always better, you know? Maya nodded slowly, his words settling into her chest like stones in water. The afternoon shift brought a new complication. At 2:15, just as the lunch crowd was thinning, a man walked in carrying a leather portfolio and wearing an expression that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. He had the look of someone official, crisp shirt, clipboard energy, the kind of person who dealt in regulations and violations. He sat at table 5 and ordered coffee, nothing else. Then he pulled out papers and started making notes, his eyes roaming the restaurant with systematic precision. "Health inspector," Julio hissed from the kitchen doorway, his face pale beneath his tan. Fuck. Louis appeared from the office, his own face carefully neutral. "It's fine. We're clean. Everything's up to code." But Maya could see the tension in his shoulders, could see the way his hands trembled slightly as he approached table 5. She couldn't hear their conversation, but she watched Louis's expression grow tighter with each passing minute. When the inspector finally left, 47 minutes later, Maya checked the clock. Louis disappeared into his office without a word. Maria came out from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "He found things," she said quietly. "Small things, but things. The grease trap needs servicing. The walk-in refrigerator has a crack in the seal. 3 of the fire extinguishers are expired." "Can Louis afford to fix all that?" Maya asked, already knowing the answer. Maria's silence was response enough. The evening shift started badly and got worse. A pipe burst in the women's bathroom, flooding the floor with 2 inches of water that smelled vaguely of rust and desperation. Louis called a plumber who quoted him $800 for an emergency repair. While they waited, Maya had to direct female customers to the single-stall bathroom in the kitchen, apologizing profusely each time. At 6:30, during the dinner rush, the oven started smoking. Not the usual cooking smoke, but thick, acrid clouds that made everyone's eyes water. Julio shut it down immediately, which meant half the menu was suddenly unavailable. "Just the grill," he told Maya grimly. "Tell customers we're limited tonight." Table 12, always table 12, had a party of 6 who'd specifically requested items that required the oven. When Maya explained the situation, the woman at the head of the table pursed her lips in displeasure. "This is unacceptable. We made reservations 2 weeks ago." "I understand, and I sincerely apologize. We're offering 20% off your meal, and I can recommend some excellent alternatives from our grill menu." "I don't want alternatives. I want what I ordered." Maya felt something snap inside her, small but definite, like a guitar string pulled too tight finally giving way. "I'm sorry," she said, and her voice came out flatter than intended, empty of the warmth that usually cushioned her service voice. "The oven is broken. I can't cook your food in an oven that doesn't work. I can offer you other options, or I can recommend another restaurant, but I can't create an oven out of thin air." The woman's face flushed red. "I want to speak to the manager." Of course. Maya turned on her heel and walked, not rushed, not apologetic, to Lewis's office. He looked up when she knocked, and whatever he saw in her face made him stand immediately. "What happened?" "Table 12 wants to speak to you. They're upset about the oven situation." "Oh," he sighed, a sound that seemed to come from his bones. "I'll handle it." Maya returned to the floor, but she couldn't settle back into the rhythm of service. Everything felt wrong. The weight of the plates, the fake brightness of her smile, the way customers looked through her like she was furniture that occasionally brought food. She was refilling water glasses when she overheard Table 9's conversation. Two middle-aged women in expensive workout clothes, the kind that cost more than Maya's rent.
"Did you hear about Richard Thornton's new development?" one said. Maya's hand stilled on the water pitcher. Richard, the silver-haired man from Thursday night. The luxury condos and Divisatero? Absolutely obscene. $3 million for a one-bedroom. Someone has to keep the riffraff out of the neighborhood, I suppose. Though between you and me, I think the whole thing's a vanity project. He doesn't need the money. He just wants to put his name on something. Well, money doesn't buy taste. Did you see what he wore to the Petersons' fundraiser? That suit was 2 seasons old. They laughed, a tinkling sound like breaking glass, and Maya moved on. But their words followed her. Richard Thornton, real estate developer. A man who built luxury condos while restaurants like Marino's struggled to keep the lights on. A man who probably owned more property than she could imagine, who saw the city as a monopoly board where the goal was acquisition, not community. A man who'd called her voice noise. At 7:45, Maya took her dinner break in the kitchen. Maria had made her pozole, even though they were slammed and even though the oven situation had thrown everything into chaos. She sat Maya down at the prep station and placed a steaming bowl in front of her. "Eat," Maria commanded. "You look like a ghost." The soup was perfect, rich and complex, the hominy tender, the broth singing with spices and love. Maya felt tears prick her eyes at the simple kindness of it. "Maria," she said quietly, "what am I doing?" "Eating soup?" "No, I mean everything. This job, this life. I've been here 6 years. 6 years of carrying plates and smiling at people who don't even see me. And for what? For survival, mija. For paying rent and buying food and getting by. There's no shame in that. But is getting by enough? That depends. Enough for what? Enough to keep breathing? Yes. Enough to feel alive?" She tilted her hand in a so-so gesture. "That's for you to decide. I'm going to that audition on Monday. I have to. Even if I fail, even if nothing comes of it, I have to try." Maria smiled, warm and proud. "Good. You should. But Maya," her expression grew serious, "don't run away from this life. Run towards something better. There's a difference." Before Maya could respond, Tommy burst through the kitchen door, his face flushed with excitement. "Maya, there's someone here asking for you." Her heart jumped. "Who?" "I don't know. Some guy. He's at table 3. Maya wiped her mouth, smoothed her apron, and walked out into the dining room. Table 3 was near the window, and sitting there, looking somehow both out of place and perfectly at ease, was Marcus Webb. He stood when he saw her, offering that same kind smile. "Maya, I hope I'm not intruding. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by." "No, I'm working, but..." She gestured helplessly at the restaurant. "I'll just have coffee, if that's all right, and maybe we could talk for a minute when you have a break." Maya's mind raced. Was this a test? A preview of Monday? Or was he here to tell her he had changed his mind, that he'd been too hasty in his invitation? "Of course. Coffee coming right up." She brought him coffee and a slice of Louis' tiramisu. On the house. She didn't care what the policy said. Then she stood there, awkward and uncertain, while Marcus took a sip and nodded appreciatively. "Good coffee," he said. Then more quietly, "Listen, I wanted to apologize again for Thursday night.
Richard's behavior was inexcusable. "It's fine," Maya said, automatically, the service response. "No, it's not fine. He had no right to speak to you that way." Marcus set down his cup and looked at her directly. "I've been thinking about what happened, and I realized something. People like Richard, people with money and power, they get used to a world where everyone caters to them, where everyone agrees with them. And when someone doesn't, when someone asserts their own humanity, their own right to take up space and make sound and exist, they call it noise."
Maya felt something unlock in her chest. I've been thinking about that word, noise. Like what I was doing was pollution instead of just being human. Exactly. But here's what Richard doesn't understand. Noise and music are the same thing. The only difference is whether someone's listening with their ears or their ego. That's, Maya searched for words. That's really profound. Marcus laughed, and it was a real laugh. Unguarded and genuine. Don't give me too much credit. I got that from a fortune cookie. Then his expression grew serious again. But I meant what I said about your voice. You have something real. And real is rare in this business. Most people I audition, they can sing. Technically, perfectly. They can hit every note. But they're not saying anything. You have something to say. I could hear it in those few seconds before Richard shut you down. I don't know what I'm saying, though, Maya admitted. I feel things, and sometimes they come out as music, but I don't know if that's enough. It's more than enough. It's everything. Marcus pulled out his phone and scrolled through something. Do you know who Ella Fitzgerald is? Of course. Did you know she won a contest at the Apollo Theater when she was 17? Showed up in a worn dress and men's boots because she didn't have proper shoes. The crowd laughed at first. Laughed. But then she opened her mouth and sang, and the laughter stopped. He looked up at Maya. Real talent does that. It makes people stop laughing and start listening. Maya felt tears threatening again. She blinked them back. I should get back to work. Of course. But Maya, Monday, 10 a.m. Don't overthink it. Just come as you are and sing what's true. That's all I'm asking. After he left, leaving a $40 tip on a $6 check, Maya stood in the empty space where his presence had been and tried to process what had just happened. Around her, the restaurant continued its evening chaos. The dinner rush was building. Table 7 needed their check. Table 12, different people now, but still Table 12, was flagging her down. She returned to work, but everything felt different. Lighter, somehow. Like Marcus's words had taken some weight off her shoulders she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. At 8:30, Louis emerged from his office looking worse than she'd ever seen him. He gathered the staff, Maya, Julio, Maria, Tommy, in the kitchen during a brief lull. I need to be honest with you all, his accent thick with emotion. The inspector's report, the repairs we need, the oven replacement, it's more than we can handle right now. I'm going to have to let someone go. The words hung in the air like smoke. Maya's stomach dropped. I don't want to. Louis continued, his voice breaking slightly. Your family, but I can't keep everyone and keep the doors open. So I'm asking, does anyone want to reduce their hours? Or if someone's been thinking about leaving anyway? Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Finally, Julio spoke up. My cousin's restaurant in Oakland, they're hiring. I could... No, Maria interrupted fiercely. No. You have 3 kids, Julio. You need full-time hours. So do you? I have Social Security. It's not much, but... Absolutely not, Louis said firmly. Maria, you're not going anywhere. Tommy shifted uncomfortably. I could go back to part-time. My student loans just came through, so I don't need as much. Tommy, you're the only dishwasher we have. Maya heard herself say. Then before she could stop herself, I'll do it. I'll go to part-time. Everyone turned to look at her. Maya, no, Louis said. You have rent. You have bills.
I'll figure it out. I can pick up shifts somewhere else. And honestly, she took a breath, feeling the truth of it even as she spoke it. I need to try something. There's an opportunity, and if I don't take it now, I might never forgive myself. Luis studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. If you're sure. I'm sure. She wasn't sure. She was terrified, but she was also tired. So tired of playing it safe, of choosing security over possibility, of making herself small so others could be comfortable. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. Maya moved through the motions mechanically. Take orders, deliver food, smile, repeat, while her mind spun with the enormity of what she'd just done. Part-time hours meant less money. Less money meant dipping into her already meager savings. It meant ramen for dinner, and no more Friday movies, and hoping her car didn't break down because she couldn't afford repairs. It meant risk. Real, concrete, terrifying risk. But it also meant time. Time to practice. Time to figure out who she was when she wasn't just surviving. Time to discover if Marcus was right, if she really did have something to say. At closing time, Maria found her in the bathroom, staring at her reflection in the spotted mirror. "You did a brave thing tonight," Maria said, coming to stand beside her. "Or a stupid thing. Sometimes brave and stupid look the same. The difference is what you do next." Maria squeezed her shoulder. "What will you sing on Monday?" Maya had been avoiding that question, but now it crystallized with sudden clarity. "Something my mother used to sing, about a bird learning to swim and a fish learning to fly." "Perfect. You practice this weekend, see? You make your mother proud." "She's dead," Maya said, the words flat. "I know, mija. That's why you make her proud. The dead, they can't tell us they're proud anymore, so we have to feel it. We have to know it in our bones." Maria placed a hand over Maya's heart. "She's here. She hears you. Sing for her." Saturday was Maya's day off, but she woke early anyway, her body confused by the break in routine. She made coffee and sat at her kitchen table with a notebook and pen, trying to remember all the words to her mother's song. Some of them came easily, preserved in memory like insects in amber, but others were fuzzy, half-remembered, and she found herself improvising, filling in the gaps with words that felt right, even if they weren't quite accurate to the original. By noon, she had most of it. The melody was easier. That had been burned into her neural pathways by countless repetitions, by all those nights when her mother's humming was the only thing standing between Maya and the dark. She sang it through once, tentatively, her voice thin and uncertain in the empty apartment. It sounded wrong, too small, too scared. She tried again, louder this time. Better, but still not right. The third time, she closed her eyes and thought about her mother. Not the sick version, but the vital one. The one who danced in the kitchen and laughed with her whole body and believed, despite all evidence to the contrary, that tomorrow would be better than today. When she opened her mouth, the song came out different, richer, fuller, aching with everything she'd lost and everything she hoped to find. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Marcus. Just wanted to wish you luck with your practice this weekend. Remember, authenticity over perfection. See you Monday?" Maya stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed back, "Thank you. I won't let you down." His response came immediately. "You couldn't if you tried." She spent the rest of the day practicing, singing until her throat was raw, until the neighbors downstairs started banging on the ceiling, until she felt like she'd wrung every drop of emotion from her body and poured it into the melody.
That night, she lay in bed and thought about Monday. About walking into a professional studio, about singing for someone whose opinion could change everything, about the possibility of failure and the even more terrifying possibility of success. What would success look like? A recording contract? Her voice on the radio? Her mother's song heard by strangers who'd never known the woman who'd first sung it? It felt too big, too impossible. So instead, Maya thought smaller. Thought about Monday morning, about putting one foot in front of the other, about opening her mouth and letting the music out. That she could do. That was achievable. Everything else, the future, the what-ifs, the dreams too fragile to examine in direct light, could wait. Monday morning, Maya took the bus to the cemetery where her mother was buried. She hadn't been in almost a year, longer than she wanted to admit, and she felt guilty as she walked through the gates, past rows of headstones that marked the places where stories had ended. Her mother's plot was in the northeast corner, beneath a tree that was probably beautiful in spring, but now just looked tired, its leaves already starting to turn with the approach of fall. The headstone was simple. Susan Chen, 1965 to 2019. Beloved mother. Maya sat in the grass beside it, not caring that it was damp, and talked. She told her mother about Richard and Marcus and the audition tomorrow. She told her about Marino's struggling and Louis having to cut hours. She told her about being scared and excited in equal measure, about feeling like she was standing on the edge of something vast and unknown. "I don't know what I'm doing," she said out loud, her voice carrying across the quiet cemetery. "I've spent 6 years playing it safe, and now I'm jumping off a cliff without knowing if there's water at the bottom or just rocks." A breeze picked up, rustling the leaves overhead, and for a moment, Maya could almost hear her mother's voice in it. "Jump, baby. I'll catch you." "I'm going to sing your song, Maya. The one about the bird and the fish. I changed some of the words. I couldn't remember them all, but I think you'd like what I did with it. I think it's become our song now. Not just yours. Ours." She stayed for another hour, sitting in the grass, letting the quiet seep into her bones. Around her, other people came and went, an old man placing flowers on a grave, a young woman standing with her head bowed, a family with small children who were too loud until their father shushed them with a sharp word. Everyone here was carrying loss. Everyone here was trying to hold on to something that was already gone. But Maya realized something sitting there. Her mother wasn't in this plot of earth beneath a tired tree. She was in the melody that Maya carried, in the memory of dancing in the kitchen, in every brave and foolish thing Maya had ever done or would do. Loss didn't mean absence. It meant transformation. When Maya finally stood to leave, she placed her hand on the headstone and made a promise. "I'm going to try, Mom. Really try. Not just go through the motions, not just survive. I'm going to live. I'm going to sing. And whatever happens tomorrow, I'm going to make you proud." The stone was warm beneath her palm from the afternoon sun, and Maya let herself believe, just for a moment, that the warmth was her mother's hand reaching back. She rode the bus home as the sun set, painting the city in shades of gold and amber. Through the window, she watched people living their lives, walking dogs, carrying groceries, standing on street corners, waiting for the light to change. All of them with their own stories, their own losses, their own melodies buried inside. Tomorrow, she would walk into Resonance Records and add her voice to all the voices that had come before. She would open her mouth and let the bird learn to swim, let the fish learn to fly, let the impossible become possible. Tomorrow, she would jump. Tonight, she practiced one more time. Standing in her small apartment with the windows open so the city could hear, Maya sang. She sang for her mother and for Maria and for every person who'd ever been told their voice was noise. She sang until her throat ached and her heart felt too big for her chest. And when she finally stopped, when the last note faded into the San Francisco night, she heard something she'd never heard before.
Applause. Faint, but unmistakable, coming from the apartment next door, from the street below, from Mr. Rodriguez through the wall. People were listening. For the first time in her life, Maya Chen let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, her voice was worth hearing.
Monday morning arrived wrapped in fog. Maya stood outside Resonance Records at 9:53 a.m., her hands trembling, her mother's song humming through her veins. She thought about Richard's sneer, about Maria's wisdom, about her mother's grave beneath the tired tree, about all the voices that had been silenced because someone decided they were noise. Then she pushed open the door. Marcus was waiting, his kind eyes crinkling with the smile. "Ready?" Maya nodded. "Ready." The recording booth was smaller than she'd imagined, padded walls swallowing sound. She stood before the microphone, headphones on, heart hammering. "Whenever you're ready," Marcus said through the intercom. Maya closed her eyes. She thought about the bird learning to swim, the fish learning to fly. She thought about her mother dancing in the kitchen. She thought about choosing to jump. She opened her mouth and sang. Not perfectly, not like the polished artists on Marcus's wall, but true, raw, honest. When she finished, silence filled the booth. Then Marcus's voice, thick with emotion. "Maya, that was... Let's talk about your future." Outside, the fog was lifting. Inside, Maya Chen was just beginning.